You know, it's funny because they always say don't do business with your friends, but here we all are doing business with our friends.
I know.
Hard to call this business, Tara. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to After Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, we are so excited here at After Broadway because we have two very special guests joining us. Both of them wear many hats.
You may have seen their work in Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, and the upcoming Narnia. From Bad Hats Theater, please welcome Artistic Director Fiona Sauder and Managing and Artistic Producer Matt Pilipiak. Thank you so much for taking time at rehearsals for Narnia to come and chat with us. How are rehearsals going?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're so happy to be here. Rehearsals have been phenomenal. I mean, it's a big show. All of our shows ask a lot of the performers, so everyone's been working so hard. But it's a great room. The cast is astounding. They're all multi-talented in all of these different disciplines. And yeah, it's been a joy. Like, everybody really feels like a united front against this really tough but amazing show. So it's been really, really delightful.
Yeah, I echo that entirely. I just look around the room at times and I'm like, how the heck did I get in this room with this many talented Canadian artists who I've been in awe of for so many years. It's so cool, and a culmination of people we've worked with before, people we've wanted to work with for a long time. Just it's a really great room. I'm really excited for people to see the show.
You know, it also feels kind of fitting that Narnia is coming because we've had our first snowfall of the season. So winter is here. But before we get into, Bad Hats and talking about Narnia, we always start our interviews with guests with the same question. So that is for both of you. What is your first memory of theater? Fiona, we can start with you.
You know, I grew up watching a lot of VHS copies of Guys and Dolls and Cats, the musical. I was obsessed with Cats, and we had a cassette of the, original Broadway cast of Cats that we played in the car on road trips, or, sparingly, because I demanded it on every car journey. And then one day that tape mysteriously broke, but I found out as an adult that my dad took it out behind the car and smashed it because he couldn't listen to Magical Mr. Mistopheles one more friggin' time. So yeah, it was a lot of old Broadway film productions, or the made for TV movie version of old Broadway shows. Yeah.
Nice.
Mine was, I didn't have a big theater going family. I grew up in Saskatchewan, and there was a weekend where we had to come to Toronto for something, and I, as a young person, saw the poster for Hairspray, which was playing at the Princess of Wales. I didn't know what a play was. I didn't know what that was, but I saw that poster, and little gay me was like, whatever that is, we have to go. And I would not drop it the entire weekend. I begged my parents to take me to whatever this poster was, and so they did eventually bring my whole family to go see Hairspray at the Princess of Wales. And from that point on, I was like, that I want to do that.
I also saw Hairspray at the Princess of Wales, so I feel you. And Fiona, kind of similarly to you, I was obsessed with the Joseph VHS with Donny Osmond as a kid, so I understand what you were going through there.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so now jumping kind of back into Bad Hats. So Bad Hats, we're reading your mission statement, and it's focused on new musical works highlighting the wisdom of our youngest generations. So Fiona, when founding Bad Hats, why did you decide to focus on stories about children or accessible to children, let's say?
Well, you know what? It's something I think a lot of great art that happened half because of a lot of hard work and intentionality, and half by accident. A lot of what we do now at Bad Hats, these reimaginings of old stories or timeless tales that are made for children originally, happened because of one great production, and that was our production of Peter Pan that started sort of I want to say by accident. Obviously, we didn't just wake up one day and find ourselves doing Peter Pan, but it was all because the composer for Narnia and for Alice and for Peter Pan is our friend Landon Doak, who's an artist we work with very, very frequently. And they had approached me one day because I was dressed like Peter Pan at a party and said, hey, you look like Peter Pan. And I talked about how much I love that story and the original Jan Barrie novel so much. And they said, why don't you write an adaptation of it? My family has a brewery out in Port Perry. So we did this really like, hired our friends, ragtag, young theater artists, spirit of play kind of doing it for $5 each and a pint of beer. And that show, we all fell in love with it so much. And Matt was in that production. And we then brought it to Toronto and started to do productions of it here, starting with a brewery tour across Toronto. So all this to say, that show really kind of snowballed into a mechanism that now we really do on purpose, which is, the kernel of it is reimagining stories that have stood the test of time and asking, what makes them so universal, and what is it that we keep coming back to, and what are those stories for a contemporary audience? And so, we just got really, really inspired by the idea, especially that's in Peter Pan, but that is also just in this mechanism at large that, when we're kids, we have so much innate ability to be ourselves, to be curious, to be brave. We're discovering so much for the first time. And so much of the physical and musical and inventive world that our style inhabits is inspired by the way that kids play, and that's what theater is at its core. And certainly our style is, a group of actors together making the thing happen amongst themselves, sometimes with very small production elements, the way that kids would take the couch cushions and, a wooden spoon and say that they're in some world that they might not be in, but they believe that they are. So it's really inspired by the spirit of that.
Yeah, nice. I would also say that, we pick stories that we love. We love these stories. They are timeless for a reason. And sure, they are kids' stories, but they also contain such universal thematic things that people of all generations speak to them. And that's really what we go for. I would say we don't rally against TYA, but we're not trying to do theater for young audiences. We're trying to create theater for all audiences. The way that a Pixar movie, an adult enjoys it just as much as a kid, probably for different reasons. And in so much of our work, a lot of TYA is education focused, is didactic. It has a message that it wants to say, which is bullying is bad. Our shows aren't aiming to do that. If there's a lesson to be gleaned from our shows, it's often for the adults. The kids already know something, they inherently have something, and the adults in the audience maybe have forgotten something they lost from childhood, and the message is really for them. So audiences of all ages will come and enjoy our shows, but really, if there's a message for anyone, it's for the adults to take away what that message is something that the kids probably already know inherently.
Yeah, I mean, as you're saying this, we've both seen Alice in Wonderland twice. We actually were first introduced to it when we had Robert Marcus on this podcast. He was raving about the taped version that happened during the pandemic, I believe. We were talking about, digital theater and the digital theater landscape. And he was like, you guys have to check out this show. And we had missed the stream, but then we went as soon as it was in Toronto. And, at the time back then, 20 something year olds watching and sobbing by the end of that production, and then looking across the theater and seeing a little kid laughing and having two completely different experiences, but also kind of a similar experience at the same time. I just the balance. I think you guys do a really great job of balancing youth with an older crowd. I'm just curious, when you put those stories together and you get into a room and start doing it, is there a moment that you're like, oh, this will hit with the adults, this will hit with the kids? Or is it trial and error? Is it experimental? How does that work?
Well, it all comes from us, it's what we need in the stories is what we're hunting for. You start by the very basic mechanics of adaptation. What do we love? What do we hate? You keep what you love, and you do away with the stuff that often in these stories they're older, so there's some dated problematic elements. Those are easy to eliminate. And then as you start to massage what all the pieces you've kept that you love are, we've realized time and time again that they're stories that are about us and the thing that we're grappling with in our lives at the time. So Peter Pan in so many ways was about what happens when we don't get to be, the ragtag lost boys living in our friend's parents' basement, living on craft dinner and making this musical. We really, that will end, and we can feel that will end, and that will be something we'll have to grieve. And then, Alice was all about, a time in our lives where we had to be taking on much more responsibility than we ever had. And there was a certain, you look up from yourself in adolescence and you realize people are watching what I do, and there's a right and a wrong way by the world's standards to do my life, as it were, or to do, insert anything here, your company, your friendships,
if you have to
your
grow
career.
up. If you have to grow up, how do you do it responsibly? How do you do it ethically? How do you maintain a sense of curiosity while, becoming an adult? Sorry, Fee, continue.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Exactly. And so for Narnia, it feels very much about new things we're grappling with, which we can get into a bit more when we talk about the show. But the answer to your question is, they're all written in a way to soothe ourselves as something that we're managing. And because that is something that we know, they say, write what you know, it becomes more honest. And the things we're feeling, obviously we're not the only ones who feel them. And so I think that there's some universality to that. And we've had a lot of, like you've just said, feedback where people say, oh, this is exactly what I needed to hear at this moment in my life. And that is so affirming, because it reminds us that we're not alone either, as we share these stories, that we have the same issues that other people do, and that we can face them together a bit.
We've also had the great fortune of being able to do our shows over many years, and have many iterations of our shows, and they change every time, sometimes in big ways, sometimes in subtle ways. But the opportunity to have our shows meet an audience and then get to go away for a while and meet an audience again, like, we are so informed by how all of our audiences respond to these things, and they teach us so much. The young people who come and see the shows, the adults who come and see the shows, all the feedback we get helps inform how we continue to develop the show further. Narnia got to premiere. It was originally commissioned and premiered in Winnipeg by Manitoba Theatre for Young People. Artistic director Pablo Felices Lunas commissioned it, and we were able to do it there. And like, the audience there, we learned so much from them as we're getting ready for this iteration. Alice had many iterations as well, and all those things help guide us. And as Fiona said, ultimately it comes from us. Like, there's always a point in the process where if we're talking about the show and Fiona starts crying, we know we're on the right track. That's like one of our pillars of making sure we know we're doing it right, because it has to move us.
Right. It definitely moved us, I will say.
Yes.
We talk about Alice all the time. When we saw it for the first time, Steph, we told literally everybody to go see her. Like, you have to see the show. We were so moved by this production. So you're definitely you're doing the work, and you're doing it well.
Great.
I know. At the end of that year, I think we were like, we had two favorite shows of that year that we saw it, and it was Alice in Wonderland and the Broadway Merrily We Roll Along. We're like, these are our
wow.
These are the top tear-jerking moments of the year. So we were like, that was like the top tier of that year. So just like to just tell you how much we're such fans. So many directions to go from your response just there. Maybe can we talk about what it's like to develop a new musical in Canada, and like what the process is like, and how it's been different, let's say, from Peter Pan to Alice in Wonderland to, let's say, Narnia?
Well, I mean, there's no mistaking that it's an uphill battle. The funding in this country it's really tough to secure, what little of it there is. And so, that's sort of the boring and obvious aspect to talk about. But I would say that, our success and what's, the foundation we've built upon has all been through strategic, wonderful partnerships with other theaters. We've really clung to our allies to survive. And we're very, very lucky, a bit of a unique story of an independent company. We're a very small team, being able to be really lifted up by the people who came before us, people at Pablo at Manitoba Theatre for Young People, like the folks at Soul Pepper, like the folks at, we have tons and tons of partners, and all of them give in different chapters. This is what Matt was speaking about, this sort of long iterations of development that include productions as sort of benchmarks throughout the process. That's the sort of unique thing, and what makes various partnerships. So, again, our friends in Winnipeg are high on this list of reasons why we've been able to do what we've been able to do. But they're a great example. They brought Peter Pan out there. They brought Alice. Our first stage production of Alice was actually out there. Same with Narnia. And the process of developing it is kind of a little bit like what Alice does, is just continually asking questions about it. And I think so many productions in Canada, these artists work so hard. They grind to make it even possible to put the show on in the first place. And then it lives and dies in a span of, 3-week run. And so, it's such a gift to get to go back and ask questions again as a team of creators, and know that we'll get to put the answers we come up with that year on stage somewhere else. And it's not a given, but it has been a consistent pattern for us. And I think that I don't have any interest in doing it any other way now that we've done it that way. It's just sort of the only way that we can. You're never going to get it perfectly right the first time. And I think that's such a gift, and it's such a good life lesson that we've been able to put into practice while making our art, that we get to, try again. And, the next life cycle for each of these after they've had all these productions is licensing. Peter Pan is being licensed across Canada now. So we get to ask questions about, like, how does it translate when we're not there doing our production? What are the things that even need to be, in the bones of the licensing package, and the what will help them as other artists who pick up this work towards their best iteration of it. I don't know. We've been quite blessed by our theater elders. And obviously we worked very, very hard to make that happen.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the answer to how we've done it, is because people have helped us and we worked hard.
And I'll add too, in terms of development, we hold ourselves to a high standard. We're not going to put out a piece of work that we don't feel like is ready, even if the opportunity presented itself. We really want to try and make sure that what we're putting on stage has had time to cook, has had time to develop, has had time to be, has had time to have holes poked in it and questions asked about it and gone back and reworked and things like that. And so the iterative quality of that is really important, to give time for the work to develop. And the other thing I'll say is that I think collaboration, both with the, presenting partners, other theaters, but also the artists we bring in, really inform the show. We shape all of every person who's touched any version of Alice, every person who's touched any version, workshop versions, previous productions of Narnia, their handprints are so all over the show. There's jokes that started because someone made a funny, inside joke or something a bit in the room that then, lives on stage forevermore because of that. And so I think it's really important that we let the art be informed by the people who are making it, not just, the directors and writers. We try not to have too much ego around that, but really let all the folks in the room be a part of the story they're telling. And I also think that that's sometimes what helps elevate and makes our shows extra magic, is that the people on stage are all really a part of telling it. They feel like they have, some ownership over the story in their own way, because they helped make it really, truly from nothing.
Right. How did you two meet?
We met in school, but we really developed our friendship post education. We became friends in school, but we weren't in the same year. So how theater school is, you're really heads down the whole time, and you really, end up in the circle that your year inhabits. But we all sort of found each other peripherally through the school, and then in post kind of developed all this. These long-standing relationships.
I was in third year when Fiona was in second year, when Landon, who wrote all the music for Peter and Alice and Narnia, was in first year. And then Victor, who's our executive producer, who also did the co-composed the music for Alice. Victor and I did a fringe show of Three Men in a Boat way back in the day. And then sort of all got folded into this production of Peter Pan. And then, it all sort of history from there.
It's funny because they always say don't do business with your friends, but here we all are doing business with our friends.
I know.
Hard to call this business, Tara. Okay.
Yeah. And it is, it's amazing and challenging and so rewarding and difficult and all the things, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah.
So for our listeners at home who don't know, can you tell us a bit about the roles of artistic director and artistic producer, and what that day-to-day looks like, or what you're responsible for, let's say?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mine is a bit of a unique one. We're a three-headed leadership structure, which is not really the mold here in Canada. Most of our, big not-for-profit theaters, you have an executive director or someone like that who's head of the business side, and then you have an artistic director who's head of the art side. And best case scenario, those are two very collaborative roles, but oftentimes business happens on one side of the building, art happens on the other side. And so we're a three-headed leadership structure. So we all sort of have our own lanes, but we also cross into each other's lanes, and we're also just the three of us. So whereas other organizations have many departments, we're dipping our hands in all sorts of things. So like very basically, if we had to look at it, like Victor's like chief business, Fiona's like chief art, and I'm sort of there bridging the gap in between. On a functional day-to-day basis, I do like all the bookkeeping, I do all the payroll, I also do all the dramaturgy on all of our shows. I help lead our new play development program alongside Fiona. So for me, it was because I wanted to do both and I didn't want to pick a lane. So I was like, I'm going to carve out a path for myself to get to do the business side of things that I like and the art side of things. But, you know, to say that, you know, Victor is all business and I do some of it and bridge the gap in between would be a great disservice to all the business stuff that Fiona does as well. She's a part of the budgeting. They are also like, you know, doing all the marketing. There's so much more that, you know, Fiona takes on than just what an artistic director normally would. So the titles are there because we have to have them and they sort of give a general sense, but they really don't indicate at all like what our day-to-day looks like. Basically, the three of us are doing it all at all times. And if one of us can't do something, then someone else subs in for the other one. And we kind of all veer in lanes. You know, when we had an Alice COVID outbreak a few years ago, you know, executive producer, executive director, like Victor Pakinko was like in there on stage playing the Cheshire Cat out of nowhere, you know? So we really do it all.
Love it.
Yeah. I think it's true. Our titles are, I think, fair, but also, don't speak to the whole of the iceberg that you can't see below the water. One thing that's very unique in my role is that, you know, often you'll see artistic directors around Canada are directing shows within the season, and that's par for the course. That's what's happening right now with Narnia. But, you know, I feel very, very lucky. I have a very strange hybrid of permission in the role that I found myself in to get to be a writer and as an artistic director. Like, it's not very common that it's an AD who also is writing the majority of the canon of work that the company's producing. And I say, you know, I'm writing the script, but it's so informed by, like, Matt's dramaturgy is a huge part of it, and Victor and Landon as a composer, and all of our other, like, the sort of widely cast net of artists who orbit these shows. You know, getting to be a creative engine is sort of what I would describe us as now. And we didn't know that necessarily when we started out. I didn't even know I was a writer, you know, until Landon said, "What if you wrote a Peter Pan?" And I said, "Sure, I bet I can do most things well. I'll try." And here I am years later. And now I can't imagine my career without that, wearing that hat. So I guess I'm just chiming in to say, I feel very lucky that we have these weird roles that allow all of ourselves to come to the table. And we've learned how to do them through doing them. You can't really train for these roles. There are ways, but certainly if someone had given me a heads up that this is what I would be doing, I wouldn't have believed them necessarily 10 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have thought that I would be doing our annual audit and enjoying it. You know, that was something that I, you know, that financial side, the bookkeeping side of it was, you know, something that, like, sort of I learned through necessity. And so much of our jobs, it was like, someone needs to do it. Who's going to do it? And I was like, yeah, I'll do that one. And now I've grown to, like, love doing it. So
that's
Steph,
ridiculous.
Can I relate? I'm an accountant as my, like, regular job. So, like,
amazing.
I'm here. I feel it.
Yes.
I relate.
And you know what? Similar to you guys, I'm a segment producer for television. So my title is just a title, but I do also wear many hats. So I totally agree with everything you guys are saying. Let's jump into Narnia a bit here. So as you said, there was a production in Winnipeg. There's also been a couple workshops. For anybody listening that has no idea what this production could be about, can you tease for our audience?
Ooh. Haven't thought about that. Well, yes. So if you have no idea what the Chronicles of Narnia are about, you've never encountered the books, you've never
just
even
like,
seen...
oh wow, what is this, you know, witch that's like maybe wintry, there's like magical characters, possibly a wardrobe, like what are we about to see?
Well, I'd say, like any good adventure story, it starts in a world much like yours and mine. This is a world that's a bit full of conflict, and we find 4 children, 4 of our 5 heroes, I'd say, of the story, arriving in a strange place. And there's a professor who has agreed to take them into her home. These are 4 orphans who have nowhere else to go. And it's a bit of a tough start. They're not sure where they are or if they'll find, you know, much peace or happiness in this strange antique home with this strange old lady. And then they stumble upon a magical wardrobe. And through the back of this wardrobe exists a whole other country that they didn't know was there. And they go on various adventures through the wardrobe and meet various fantastical creatures that live in a land called Narnia. And they come back forever changed.
That's great.
That's what I'll say.
And I'll say, for people who love the Chronicles of Narnia, the story that they like love and cherish is still very much there intact. It's like, there's Easter eggs from all the Chronicles, but it largely follows the plotline of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But with all of our work, we like to reinvent, we like to surprise. So all the regular elements of the story that you know and love are there, with a lot of really fun surprises along the way. And with all of our work, it's very imaginative, very playful. It'll be very funny. This one's also just so epic. The adventure side of it is so epic. The prophecy that exists in Narnia is so epic. And also, it's a musical, but it's all actor musician led. So everyone in the ensemble plays instruments throughout the show, and we are our own orchestra. So I think that that's really special. And it's not like we're off on the sides playing it. The actors with musicians are integral to the movement and storytelling of the piece. So all of those pieces, which are sometimes relegated to a pit underneath the stage, are on full display here. And I'm playing the accordion in this show, which is not an instrument I have played before. And my God, trying to do choreography and play an accordion at the same time, not easy. So I think the thing that we're pulling off is quite virtuosic.
Can I ask about the actor musicians? Was this something that was maybe born out of necessity in the beginning and then kind of accidentally became very important to the show? Or like, I
exactly.
I'm nailing it. When I watch it, I think what's so magical about it to me is that you as the audience are like seeing the creation of the whole thing all in front of you, and nothing is like hidden or like, a special effect behind the scenes. Like the whole thing is created in front of you. So can you maybe talk about like what it adds to the storytelling to have actor musicians on stage?
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I go on this rant a lot, so Fiona's heard me do it so many times.
Please.
But it absolutely start from just a place of we don't have the budget, so we can play these instruments. Let's do it. And then from that started to be a very conscious choice in aesthetic and how we choose to present our work. But for me, so much of theater right now, it needs to answer the question like, why not film? Why not sitting on your couch and streaming something? Because those things are really good at what they do, and realism they do really, really, really well. Something that I think our aesthetic lends itself towards, that I think is inherently theatrical, is invoking the imagination of the audience, collectively imagining something together, to take, these instruments and play them in, and to grab a household object and say, this is now a sword, to lift someone up and say, this is flying, to, be spun around on a desk and say, this is falling down a rabbit hole. It evokes that emotion. And if we all collectively believe it together, it creates something really magical. And asking the audience to be an implicit part of that collective imagining, it doesn't work if you don't buy in with us. And so gathering a community of people together to tell a story, the people watching the story are as intrinsic to it as the people telling the story when you're all in that room together. And their need to believe in the story as much as we need to believe in it, I think helps make our shows really special.
Yeah. I think there's something also really human about, getting to see the strings of how something operates. It's delicious to watch a magician do a magic trick, but it's sometimes even more delicious to find out how he did it. And there's value in both. When we watch a big, huge Broadway musical that has, hydraulics and pits in a stage that like rise and fall and a revolve and all these like incredibly beautiful, expansive production elements, and they make magic with it, it's gorgeous. And our brain is electrified because it goes, oh, the like file not found. Like, how did they do that? Suddenly I'm seeing this thing that it wasn't there before. But when we see something and we see how it's done, and our brain goes, file found. I see what you did, but I also still have the same feeling of magic happened, like that something appeared as if from nowhere. But yet when I think about it, I know how you did it. You showed me how you did it. That is so like inspiring to an audience. It allows them to feel like perhaps they could as well do that. It like Matt's saying, it invokes their complicity and in their belief and their imagination. Great. But it also sort of, I think, empowers people to feel like, oh, it's not rocket science. It's just agreeing to do it. And that's what our ensembles do so well, is they dive into, this kind of team sport of making the show, because it needs to be so physical. You couldn't do all this in sort of like a sort of slow paced, melancholic version of itself. It has to be pretty high octane to make that magic happen. So that's where the style comes from. And I think it's, it's really fun.
Going off of that, with the actor musicians on stage, obviously there's like songs that you're all performing, but I'm just curious for like the musical script, let's say, like, was there moments of improvisation in the rehearsal room? I just imagine like a big jam sesh happening and people are like, this would sound cool here. This would sound cool here. Cause everybody does, they also wear many hats. So was it kind of like that? Is it like a collaboration as well with the musicians?
Yeah,
very much so. Like early on, we had an idea of what instruments we wanted, specifically Landon and then Jonathan Corcola-Storga, who's our musical supervisor / arranger. They both had very specific, like, it'd be great to have this, but one of the things we really wanted, we're like, oh, we'd love to have a cello in the show. And so when we auditioned, we were looking for cellists, and who we found perfectly for a role, John Tan plays the clarinet brilliantly. And so no cello in the show, but now clarinet that is like so gorgeously played. And it for me now, it'd be impossible to imagine the show without having clarinet in it.
Yeah.
So, like I said earlier, with all of our work being really formed by the artists we have, it's also informed by the instruments that they play.
Nice.
That really make up the heartbeats of the show.
How does that work with licensing? Like, is that something that is like written into the licensing script, or do they have a bit more freedom in the instruments? Or I don't know, you tell me.
We're still navigating that,
Sure.
to a degree. Like, for the most part, like, Peter's the only one that we have like full out for licensing. Alice is just about to do that, and Alice is one of the ones that we'll have to figure it out, because there's some very specific instrumentation in that one that will be a question mark. But when we licensed Peter Pan out to the Globe Theatre in Regina, they had this wonderful actress, Sierra Haynes, who played the violin. There was no violin in Peter Pan in our production, but there was violin added into that production because Sierra played the violin. And now, jump forward to right now, Sierra Haynes is in our production of Narnia, playing the violin epically in this show. So, very much informed by those people. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, I would just say that, the score is fully written in advance. It's not that we're trying to figure out what does this song sound like as a group of, like, once the actors are hired, it's because they're hired because we know they can play the music that we've written. Yes, we will tailor it to what they've got going on, or skills that we didn't know they had. So in advance of, getting into the room with rewriting stuff, or Jonathan Corcola-Storga is rewriting stuff for a clarinet, because now we have a clarinet. How fun. Amazing. We're reimagining duets between the clarinet and the violin because we have those things secured. But the room is still full of like questions and suggestions all the time. I think just yesterday, someone asked if there could be drums. They're like, I think there should be drums on my entrance. Can we get like, is someone available to do like a snare roll? So we play with, what if it was that? Or what if it was a kazoo? Does someone have a kazoo? Actually, can you try with the brushes? Okay, actually, wait, you can use the spoons and make them like this. And together we're pulling from the palette that like Landon as a composer and Jonathan Corcola as an arranger have, put together. And we go, what if we played on this theme and added this? And sometimes it can come from kind of anyone in the room. And a lot of it is just based on, what we're craving, or the story beats that you couldn't know were there until you get it on its feet and go, oh, you need crave something there.
Right.
And then you figure it out.
Nice. Can you tease a moment from the show that feels special to each of you?
I mean,
sorry, that was heavy hitting.
No, it's just I love them all.
Or maybe one that you think will feel like special to audiences when they watch it. I'm sure there's many.
I have two, which is, I think, I have three. The first, going through the wardrobe, the first time we go through the wardrobe, I think is really magical, is like intrinsically Bad Hats, and is just like such a perfect marriage of like what we do with storytelling and how we reimagine stories. Is like that first, Lucy first going through the wardrobe. Selfishly, one of the characters I play, this sort of reinvention of these Beaver characters of Mr. and Mrs. Beaver from the book, I think is like one of the most delightful and fun things that the adaptation has. And then my third is an epic battle that happens towards the 11th hour of the play. I think is a really cool battle.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna zoom in on, is the battle. I've had this, so much of the show as a director and as a writer has been like living in my brain and in this sort of the movie in my mind of it, and finally getting the actors in situ and playing with all the tangible real parts of the storytelling and making it come to life. Like, it's just been like watching my daydreams come to life. I really feel very, very grateful that's that it's sort of how I dreamed it, like how it would look. And so now I have really beautiful dreams, so I think you're going to like it all. But the battle particularly is really special. It's like, it's such a great Bad Hat's question, like we find these stories where it's like, okay, how do we dive into the bottom of a pool is in this story. How do we fly through the air? How do we, go down the rabbit hole? How do we go through a wardrobe? And this one has, how do we have like an epic, for the ends of the earth battle with 9 people who also are having to play this epic song at the end at the same time. So how do we do that? How do you make it feel rich and textured and full when you are basically making an orchestra run around the stage? So I think it's really kind of come to fruition in a very cool way. I think the kids will be blown away by that.
Nice.
Fiona, you're choreographing this show, right? Like, is that a new role for you in this one, or just kind of a title for the first time?
Well, I'm co-choreographing with Rohin Duper, who we've worked with before. We love him. But yes, I think it's a new title, not in my life. I'm not like a career choreographer. It's just that my direction is so physical, and it's not as though Narnia is a world, especially with, how small the cast is and how big the music is, that there's actually a lot of room for capital D dance. And so it's all like cleverness of movement and shape, organization. And so there's so much of it that is just like direction and choreography in general in my life, but especially in this show, really go hand in hand. So when we were looking at how we wanted to make that happen, it just sort of, one sort of followed the other. It just sort of made sense. But I love working in movement and in dance. And it's been a wonderful part of the show, and a great partnership with Rohin. And, our actors are so, doing wild things with instruments in their hands, as Matt was telling you. So it's been a great time.
Earlier we mentioned the film production of Alice in Wonderland. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on like pro shots? Is this something that you would like to film? Is this something that you're interested in doing in the future? Like, what do you guys think?
I think when it's done well, it's a really amazing thing, because I'm of two minds. One, I wish people would leave their houses and go to the theater, but I also think that access is really a barrier for so many. And I think that what we really need is a culture of theater appreciation and desire to engage with live theater, even if you're watching a pre-record, because that makes you want to get up and go see it live, the same way that you would watch, like, I don't know, the Eras Tour documentary and still want to go see the Eras Tour. Like that's the same thing. And I think that it's so beautiful. I've seen so many shows from pro shots that I never would have seen, that I have folded into my canon of inspiration and some of my favorite pieces that I've never seen live. But if they come to the city, or I'm in a city where they're playing, I will now want to go see them live, because I've become a fan through a means that I wouldn't otherwise have. And so I think people bring up the Alice recording a lot, and we always have a little bit of a cringe about it, because it was like early days Alice, and it's not usually that your first draft, that we put lots of drafts on stage in front of an audience, is seen by like 13,000 people across the world, because that's who saw it. And I'm glad that the reviews are positive, but we're like, oh, that was beta Alice. Like, that's not even who she was at all. So, I think that, but it speaks to how powerful that medium is. And I think I would love to engage with it.
Yeah. I also think, to your point, like maybe it felt like that to you guys, but as you were talking about like the behind the scenes, that people love to see like the creation of magic, like maybe that, is also at a time when we were really craving live theater. I think we were taking anything and everything at that point. So, and then to see it, in its final form is obviously the best way to do that.
You also have cast albums for both Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, which we talk about so much on this podcast, that like shows kind of live on through cast albums. Forgotten's not the right word, but sometimes things kind of like disappear if there's not like a physical actual recording of the music. And so to have cast albums for both of those, and then we can like hope for a Narnia cast album in the future.
You may. In fact, we're putting it at the end of this month. Yes.
Oh, amazing!
That's exciting. Because I was listening to both of those yesterday, and I was just thinking how lucky we are to have those kind of recorded, that I can revisit at any time and not just have to like live in my memory forever and ever. And it can be shared with so many more people because it's so readily available.
Yeah. It's been pretty cool to have, young artists also who see the shows and also maybe access them via the cast albums, like reaching out and saying like, I'd love to use this for, my auditions and put it in my book and things like that. I think, things that we're creating being part of, someone else's beginning of their journeys into art, like the art world. It's so meaningful. Like people are working on, at Sheridan, we've worked with the Sheridan College a bunch now, and often get students reaching out to us saying, can we use the scene from this show or that thing that's in development for you guys for this project? We really want to explore these things. And, it's a really special way to give back and also get so much from them. We love working with the students over there, and yeah.
And we feel very fortunate to have gotten to record those two and be able to record this upcoming one. That was something that that is entirely possible thanks to the Canada Council and the Ontario Arts Council and the Toronto Arts Council, getting funding to do those recordings. It's so rare to be able to do something like that. And really a huge props to our executive producer, Victor, who has written incredible grants articulating that need, that was able to get us that funding, and has led the production from a producer standpoint of all of those recordings and this one. And it's just a testament. It allows the shows to have so much more life longer than they could. Yeah. And we're very, very lucky to have gotten to do that.
I love that. Okay, we have a bit of a rapid fire for you guys. This is called Personality Test Drive. So we're going to ask some questions and quick answers. Okay, so your road trip cast recording, what are you listening to?
Les Mis.
Into the Woods.
Wow, great. Classics.
Great. Okay, maybe you've answered this with your work, but what is the movie you'd turn into a musical?
The Goonies. The Goonies.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Well, that's a good one. I don't know. Charlotte's Web.
Oh, that would be really beautiful.
That's nice.
Yeah. Favorite costume you've worn?
I once got to dress as a bearskin rug. I was a polar bear, but there's the bearskin rug, and then I was hiding under it in the pre-show. And then when the show started, I rose from the floor and wore it like a hat, like the bear was here, and I wore it like a cape. It was amazing.
How long were you under there? How long do you have to lie there?
10 minutes of being under the rug. Yeah.
Okay.
Mine would be this restoration comedy that I did where I had this gorgeous massive wig that had these Farrah Fawcett bangs on it, and I just lived my full fantasy.
Good.
Okay, who is the character you've played that's most like you?
I mean, I was Peter Pan. It's sort of the easiest answer in my life.
Well, Fiona writes a lot of the roles for me, and she just takes my personality and puts them into the roles. So a lot of them, but I would say in particular, probably the White Rabbit and Panicking About Time.
What an icon that character was. I just have to say. Favorite composer?
I mean, it's gotta be Sondheim for me.
I know it's so cliche, but it's gotta be Sondheim.
Correct. Okay.
Tara. We have some balloons happening here.
I don't know what's going on. But... You said the right answer. We won, Fiona.
Okay. What is your favorite spot to sit in the theater?
Oh. Center orchestra, I guess. Or first box.
I like to be in the back, tucked away a little bit to the side, but in the orchestra level. But I like to see everything. Yeah, sometimes center orchestra, but rear orchestra for sure.
Right. Favorite show that you've never seen?
Hadestown.
Nice.
Oh, that's a good answer. I don't know. Favorite show I've never seen. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that one.
Okay.
We'll get you on the next one.
Yeah.
What is your guilty pleasure musical?
Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I love that show.
I just don't feel guilty about any of it at all. Kind of selections from Mean Girls. There's one or two songs and I'm like, this is great. And I really don't like the rest of it. So I'll just put on those songs.
I feel you on that. There are
I'm this should have been better.
But as a whole, not great.
When I finally saw Mean Girls, I was like, oh, this is actually better than I thought it was.
Probably because I gave you a scathing review.
You said it was so bad. And I thought, I was like, this is fine. This is not that
bad. Your favorite score?
Ooh. I would say Hadestown is up there for me. Just that beautiful jazz folk world. I know I already said Hadestown once, but I just love the way that show's arranged. And I love listening to the original composer's
concept. Yeah.
concept album, and then
Yeah.
seeing how it grew to there. It's very inspiring.
I'm gonna go with maybe Waitress. I love Sarah Bareilles so much. I loved her as a singer-songwriter before the thing, and I thought it was just like a beautiful translation of like who she was as a singer-songwriter into this medium. And I thought it's not perfect, but I really love a lot of it.
Another great concept album to cast recording in that.
Yeah.
It's fun to hear like the process almost like from the
Yes.
from the concept album to what the like final product ended up being.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. What is a dream project to work on together?
Ooh. There's so many, man. We have you must assume we have a list of many things we really want to do next. I've always wanted to do something in like the Roald Dahl universe, but it's a tricky thing to get the rights for. I mean, I'll hard pitch you on something another day. It's called The Crucible, the musical for kids, and we'll talk about it another time. But I'll leave that one there. There's so many. It's like it's infinite. I just want to write roles for Matt forever and have him tell me how to write better.
I will say there's so many. One of the ones that is currently happening, and I'm just going to say it because I think it's so exciting, is we're working on a musical adaptation of the Nutcracker story, and Fiona's doing the script, and Britta Johnson's doing the music, and it's going to be
we love Britta.
Incredible. Yeah, so I'm particularly excited about reimagining like that classic Winter Story, which is so connected to the ballet and is gorgeous, and like what Bad Hats' version of that will be. So that's one of mine.
I love that.
Oh,
we are big Britta Johnson fans on this podcast.
Yes.
Okay, before we actually go, the Canadian theater scene keeps changing and growing, and Bad Hats has like kind of made its mark in this scene. What do you hope that how the company evolves from here? Like, what are you hoping that people that see a production for the first time or return, like, what do you hope for the future of Bad Hats? I know that's like a very deep question, but just in terms of the Canadian theater scene.
I mean, I would like for us to be able to keep growing and grow our team. Like in terms of the Canadian theater scene, it's very hard for young companies to be able to grow. And a lot of young artists come to us asking like, how do we start our own company? And we generally there's lots of advice we give, but one of the things is, kind of don't start a company, work on a project that you love. And from there, see if you like working together, if the work works, if it keeps inspiring, if you want to keep doing this, yada, 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 it can grow from there. But I think part of the reason don't start with a company is because, there's so many kinks to work out. You won't know what the thing is you have until you figure it out in real time. It's been our experience, but also because it's so hard to sustain what we're doing. So honestly, what I'd love for us to be able to do is to not, we love to work hard and we work very hard now, but we work way too hard for, not necessarily just way too little money, but like, way too little point blank. Like, I know it feels like we've done this, we've had so much success and we've made this mark and that's great. But, make no mistake, it's an uphill climb and we really need to be able to grow our team and expand our reach and just get to a place where things are a bit more sustainable, because it's been growing every year towards that goal. And I'm very grateful for that. But it's a long road. So I hope for that. That's sort of a generic answer, but I want to be able to continue to survive and bring more people into the magic thing we're doing in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I echo all of that and hope to grow like a national and hopefully even one day international presence of being like, people like a company who people look towards for adaptations of stories that they love and to be reimagined, and a home for like exceptional Canadian musical theater, things that get grown here, and a really unique lens on how we look at old stories and tell them today and how we can musicalize them and tell them for audiences of all ages.
Yeah. So for anyone listening at home, if you're like, God, I just really need a snappy adaptation of this story that I love, give us a call.
Call us.
Everyone pull out their list of their favorite childhood stories.
Yes.
Please. Yeah, like kind of tying into that, you addressed it a little bit already, but what advice would you give young performers or writers who are looking to create their own work?
Make things that delight you, don't try to make the thing, be inspired by the stuff that you see and steal ideas, get inspo from every corner of your artistic mind and world. But I think, the best advice, if I could go back and give my younger self advice through this road of creation, it would be like, trust your taste, because you know what delights you, and that's what the world might not have yet, is the specific thing that makes you jump out of your seat and go, oh, I love this, or the thing that brings you joy. I would say keep going and do your taxes.
Yeah. And then
really good advice, I think.
I would add, surround yourself with exceptional people who uplift you, who challenge you, who support you, who asks you all the questions that make you go, ugh, but lead you to do something even better than you've done before.
Love that. Where can people follow you and the Bad Hats team?
All of our Bad Hat stuff is at Bad Hats Theater. And you can follow me at Fiona Sauder.
And at Matt Pilipiak.
And Bad Hats Narnia runs at Soul Pepper until December 28th. And you can make a day of it by visiting the Christmas market in the distillery for those in Toronto. And tickets are available at Soul Pepper and Crows. And I guess your website too, Bad Hats Theater.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely to chat to both of you. I could honestly sit here all day and listen to you both talk about your work. So we really appreciate you both taking time out of your busy rehearsal schedule.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much.